I'm going to tell you about two brothers. They lived on adjoining farms, and then they started to fight, and then they fell into this conflict. It was their first serious rift in 40 years. 40 years of farming side by side, sharing machinery, trading labor, trading goods, anything each other needed without a hitch. Then it all fell apart. It began with a small misunderstanding, and it grew into a major difference. And then finally, it exploded into an exchange of bitter words, followed by weeks of silence. One morning, there was a knock on the eldest brother's door. He opened it to see a man with a carpenter's toolbox. "I'm looking for a few days' work," the man said. "Perhaps you have a few small jobs here or there I could help you with." "Yes," he said, "I do have a job for you. Look across that creek at that farm. That's my neighbor. In fact, that's my younger brother. Last week there was a meadow between us. Then he took his bulldozer to the levee, and now there's a creek between us. Well, he did this to spite me, but I'll do him one better. You see that pile of lumber by the barn? I want you to build a fence. An 8-foot tall fence, so I can't even see his place or his face anymore." The carpenter said, "I understand the situation. Show me the nails and the post hole digger. I'll get to work." The older brother had to go to town, so he helped the carpenter get the materials ready, and then he was off for the day. He worked hard all day in the hot sun, measuring, sawing, nailing. And about sunset, when the older brother returned, the carpenter had finished his job. His eyes are open wide, his jaw dropped. "Where's my fence?" There was no fence there at all. The carpenter had built a bridge. A bridge that stretched from one side of the creek to the other. A fine piece of work, handrails and all. And the neighbor, his younger brother, coming towards him, his hands outstretched. He said to the older brother, "You are quite a fellow to build this bridge after all I've said and done to you." The two brothers stood at each end of the bridge, and then they met in the middle, taking each other's hand. They give each other a hug, and then they turn around to see the carpenter hoist his toolbox onto his shoulder. "No, wait. Stay a few days. I've got other projects you can do." "I'd love to stay on," the carpenter said, "but I have a few more bridges to build." Church, Jesus was a carpenter. He could have been anything he wanted to be. He was the Son of God. But he came to earth and learned to build. This was not by accident. He was effective because of this trait. Look at the woman at the well. Look at the woman taken in adultery. Look at the bridges that Jesus built with his disciples. Bridges so strong, so connected, that they were willing to be martyred for him down the road. Crucified, in one case upside down, for him because of the bridge and the relationship he had built with them. Now I want to look at the bridges that he wants to build to you. There's a change coming in this country, church, and it starts with you. One of our core values here at Family Worship Center is reaching out. We're called to be better. We're called to build bridges. I watched last Sunday in amazement at what God can do. There's a historic number of baptisms for a church in Mattoon in one day. I can't find any church that's done that. And then I looked at it, and I didn't see a thing I had done. I didn't see a thing Brad had done. I didn't see a thing any of the elders had done. What I saw was what God was doing. As the Holy Spirit moves in this church, you've got a leadership team that's got the good sense to just get out of his way. Just get out of his way. Remember Paul's words in 1 Corinthians 3, 6 through 8. I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but God has been making it grow. So neither the one who plants and the one who waters, the one who plants and the one who waters have purpose. They'll each be rewarded according to their own labor. What planting are you doing today, church? What bridges are you building today? I had a letter given to me by Brad just last week. It was addressed to me. It was anonymous. The person asked for forgiveness. He'd long held bitterness against me. It was because I built a bridge to him. Because I built a bridge to him. And if you're here, brother or sister, I accept your apology, and I want to apologize to you. Because whatever it was I had done to hurt you so deeply, just know that at that time I was in God's way. Let me say this. When people ask me what we're doing out here, happened this week, what are you doing out there? How are you able to grow like you're growing? Churches are on the decline. See, I have a simple answer. God shows up and we get out of his way. God showed up and I didn't put a roadblock and say, wait a minute, God, I'm not sure this guy over here, he's ready to be baptized. I'm not sure this girl over here, God's ready to be baptized. See, that's a roadblock. I don't pre-qualify the people coming in the door. And let me tell you the second part of this. We've got a church body that doesn't pre-qualify me. You see, no one says, hey, wait a second here. This guy, he doesn't have the degrees to be given messages. He doesn't have the training to be given messages. No one pre-qualified Brad either. Hold on a second. What education does Brad have? The Holy Spirit equips the called. He equips the called. We don't judge. Let him do that. It'll free you up with all kinds of extra time. I'm telling you. You see, we took the ministry training manual, man's ministry training manual, and we just tossed it. We just tossed it. And we've done a novel thing. See, we picked up this book. You may have heard of it. It's called the Holy Bible. It's God's training manual. We picked it up. And when I open this book, I see example after example of God's unending love for his people. I read a love story, and then I see a challenge from the greatest pastor that ever walked this earth to love thy neighbor as you love yourself and to love God with all your heart. That's the challenge. We threw out man's ways. We threw out man's training manual, and we just replaced it with loving people. Have you heard about the CEO? I once heard of this company. They made widgets. And they were wildly successful making these widgets. Made them for years. They worked well. And so the CEO, he got old and he passed away. And so the board of directors gets together and they decide, we need a new CEO. Let's hire a guy. And so they find this guy with all this qualification and all this training. And he wears a suit. And he looks really good in his suit. And he talks eloquently. He never offends anybody. And so they're like, man, we like this guy. So they interview him. Here's the problem. He says, I don't really like widgets. Yeah, but he looks good in that suit. He looks good in that suit. So they go ahead and hire him anyway. They're so comfortable in their affluence. They're so arrogant. They hire him anyway. And so he takes over. And within weeks, he's halted the widget factory. They're old news. Everybody's got one that wants one. So they halt the widget factory. Years go by. Sales are in decline. The company's folding up. It's in debt. It's in trouble. So they fire the CEO. And they go to do interviews. And they find this guy. He walks in. He doesn't have all the education in the world. He doesn't have all the education in the world. He wears a t-shirt and tennis shoes. They're like, we don't know if we can hire this guy. We better interview him, though. He's here. So they interview him. And he tells them about how he used to collect widgets and how much he loves them. and how much he misses them because they were the real thing. And how some of these other companies are making these knockoff widgets. They're not nearly as good. They look like it. They sound like it. But when you get to the bottom of it, it's not the real thing. So they hire him. And within weeks, he started the widget factory back up. He reminds them of what made them successful in the first place. He reminds them, you used to make these things called widgets. They were awesome. And yeah, they're old news, but they worked really well. Next thing you know, the company's growing and growing. It's creating jobs. It's creating innovation. They're lauding this guy as a hero. Here's the truth. It's a simple formula. You just got to go to what works. That's the problem with some of our churches today. They take the pump and they take a circumstance. They build it up. The widget's not good enough anymore. Everybody's got one that wants one. The real thing cannot be replaced. And the more they get into that, and the more you see that, simple looks better. The more flavors you put on an ice cream cone, vanilla starts to look pretty good. So what am I saying to you? Family Worship Center goes back to what works. We're not making widgets. We threw out all the extra stuff. And we went back to what works. The real thing. What works. Had a lady just the other day. She called me and she told me how, and I don't know why. I don't know, it's just something about, sometimes people do this to me. They call me and then she starts telling me about a relationship and it's not good. And she's like, what would you do? I said, I'd come to church. She says, well, we're not religious. We don't like religion at all. And you know what I said to her? I don't either. And she looks at me and she goes, what do you mean? I said, I don't either. Religion stinks, man. It stinks. And when I tell you it stinks, I mean it reeks of man. It reeks of him. So I said, I'm about relationships. We build bridges. We let God do the heavy lifting. Religion reeks of man and not God. Remember the manual. This thing has worked for 2,000 years. We don't need to add to it. It doesn't need our help. If it's not in that book, why would you do it? Why would you do it? It's a radical idea. But the fruits of this labor of love are showing up. The Bible has always worked. It's the best-selling book year after year after year after year. #1 bestseller every year. And I want to tell you about the love that I see in this Bible. The love. Jesus, friend of sinners, King of Jews. They mocked him. They still mock him. Our treasure in this world is just dime store garbage to God. It's dime store garbage. None of it goes with us. Nothing goes with us except for our best suit and a few baubles that you can fit into a 2x2 by 7 foot box. In my case, it might be a 6 foot box. Might fit in that one. But you move into this box for the final time. But yet all the while, we hold our possessions in this life up to everybody to see. Look what I've got. Like that's the joy in our lives. The Bible tells us where true joy comes from. Some of us never get it. I think most of you in this room get it. There's no hope for us outside of Jesus Christ. There's none. Outside of Him, we'll hold on to things that are nothing more than a vapor. Fleeting joy will be your life story. Ups and downs, highs and lows are normal, church, but I am talking about a joy unextinguished by loss, by sorrow, by shame. A joy unextinguished. An unspeakable joy. A joy like I had when my grandfather passed away. So close I was to that man, and it was such a weird feeling to be at his funeral and be sad because you miss him, but happy for him because you know where he went. It's a joy that you don't get from the world. God told me today there's a skeptic. He told me that. There'd be a skeptic here today. And He told me to tell you, someday you will believe in me. And I am telling you today, Mr. or Mrs. Skeptic, welcome to the judgment-free zone. We love you. And I'm glad you're here. Listen, I don't care why the woman or man that's not of God walks through that door. I don't care. I just care that they walk through the door. Because see, they can come for whatever reason they want to think they're coming for. They can come because their cousin's getting baptized, or they can come because, well, the little kids are doing a special today, or whatever excuse they've got to find to tell their friends, well, I went to church, but it was because the kids were singing. The truth of it is, even when the non-believer walks in that door and feels that feeling, that heaviness that we feel in here, they cannot deny they feel something. They don't know what it is. Maybe they don't know what it is, but they're going to feel the Holy Spirit. And so once they're in the door, we let God do the work. We plant that seed. We may never see them again, but we plant that seed, and then somebody's going to come along and water it. And then it's going to grow one day. In Romans 14, 10 through 12, you then, why do you judge your brother or sister? Why do you treat them with contempt? For we will all stand before God's judgment seat. It is written, as surely as I live, says the Lord, every knee will bow before me, every tongue will acknowledge God. So then will each of us give an account to our Lord God. Every tongue will acknowledge me. Every knee will bow to me. You don't want to be on the wrong side of that equation, church, when He comes back. You don't want to be that guy or gal. God stays beautiful eternally. What is it you don't see in Him that you see in the world? What is it? You're beautiful to God. He fell in love with you the day He made you. But you don't trust Him. Why don't you love Him like He loves you? Listen, if I was up here, actually, you know what? If I did a Facebook video back on like Wednesday, and I said, come to Family Worship Center, we're going to give away $1 million. One lucky person is going to reach under their seat, and there's going to be a ticket, and you're going to get $1 million. We wouldn't have enough seats in this place. We would not have enough seats in this place. But here's the truth. You can't take that $1 million with you. You might have it for a little while. You might borrow it for a little while. I've said it before. I've been to big auctions, and I've watched people's prized possessions, prized car collections just get scattered about with whoever had the money to buy them. Somebody else driving that guy's car. You can't take the $1 million with you. So, why is it that when we do a video and we say, come to Family Worship Center, see, we've got something better for you than the $1 million. I've got something you can take with you eternally. I've got something better than gold or silver, which will rust and corrode. Moths will eat it and destroy it. It says in the Bible, your treasure is nothing. I've got it, and I want to give it to you for free. Where's all the people? Why isn't there a line out the door? And it's not just this church, it's every church that's doing the right thing. Where are the people to receive it? What is it you see in the world that you don't see in Him? I'll tell you, love is a transient definition. What do I mean by that? See, our language has qualifiers, right? And the Greek language, which the Bible was written in part, had more than one word for love, but we only have one. We've got love. So I'll put it to you this way. Say my mom gets on an airplane, right? And Mom's a talker. And she sits next to this young guy. And she gets talking to him. And she says, "Hi, my name's Mary." He says, "Hi, Mary, my name's Tiger." "Tiger? Well, that's a really interesting name. What is it you do?" "I'm actually a golfer. My name's Tiger Woods." "Oh, okay. Well, she don't follow golf." Right? So she says, "Well, that's neat. You're a golfer. Are you a good golfer?" And he says, "Well, I'd like to think I am, Mary. I'd like to think I'm a good golfer." "Well, you know what? My son's a pretty good golfer, and you should play with him sometime. You would really enjoy it." Now, see, that's two definitions of good golfer. When he says, I like to think I'm a good golfer, what he means by that is at one time he was roughly 2 times better statistically than the next best guy in the world. 2 times better. What she means when I say I'm a good golfer is I like to hit a ball at a flag with a stick, and sometimes it gets there. You see the difference? That's the different definition of love. When I tell you, I love you, brother, and you don't return that love to me, right? I cry, right? Because I've lost something, right? But when God tells us He loves us, that love that has no definition, that love that's boundless and endless, when He says, "I love you," and you don't return it, He cries too. But He doesn't cry because He's lost something. He cries because you've lost something. You've lost it. That's the difference. That's the difference in the definition of love. He gives it freely, church. Someday He says, "You'll believe in me." But He's taken so much from me, Matt. He's taken so much from me. Let me ask you, who does the taking and who does the giving? I want to tell you about a guy I had. God hit me with this several months ago. I didn't know where to use it. Well, here it is. He was a $10 friend. What do I mean by that? I worked with this guy for years, and he was my $10 friend. He would come in, and it was like 2 or 3 times a week, and he'd be like, "Hey, you have like $10 I can borrow because I'm low on lunch," right? The next 3 or 4, "Hey, you got 3 or 4 bucks I could borrow? I'm low on lunch," right? And so you would just he was my $10 friend. And so then, like before long, not because he was like a horrible person, just because, I don't know, he's just my $10 friend, I start to look around and I realize this guy owes me like $100. Right? That's how Satan is. That's how he is. "Hey, Matt, could I borrow $10 from you today? Can I get 10 minutes of your time today, Matt?" And so you give it to him. Right? And then a few days later he comes back, "Hey, Matt, I need another $5 today, man. I'm a little short today." And you give it to him. And so then before long, you look around and you realize that Satan owes you like $100 worth of your life. And you ain't getting it back. You ain't getting it back. Listen, you got to kick him out. Like Brad said last week, he's occupying this $100 space in your mind. He's not even paying rent. Kick him out. He's a $10 friend. Don't give him the $10. You just got to cut him off like I did with this guy. And like, "Hey, man, I'd like to give you $10 more, but you owe me all this money. And unfortunately, I can't do it." That's what you got to do with Satan. But see, we're so blessed in our affluence here in America. You know, when God calls the wealthy to be generous, the wealthy says the wealthy are to be generous. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. You see, God's a worldly God. He didn't just create America, right? He doesn't see wealth on our scale. He looks at the third world countries. They're living, 10 people deep in a mud hut, right? Everyone in this church is the wealthy. The poorest person in this country is wealthy in many of these third world countries, very wealthy. So when He calls the wealthy to be generous, He's talking to you. You don't get off the hook. When He hit me with that one day, I was like, "Man, God, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Because see, we look around in America, we look around at each other. We look around at each other. Well, he's got more than I got. He's wealthy. But God's looking at the whole world going, "What's going on here?" There's revival in all these other places. This nation that I've set apart, that I've blessed, that I've exalted, why won't they come to me? His heart breaks because we're losing something. That's the condition of man. Malcolm Muggeridge wrote in his book, Vintage Muggeridge, Religion and Society. It was written in 1985. So the final conclusion would surely be that whereas other civilizations have been brought down by attacks of barbarians from without, ours has the unique distinction of training its own destroyers at its own educational institutions and then providing them with facilities for propagating their destructive ideology far and wide, all at the public's expense. Thus did Western man decide to abolish himself, creating his own boredom out of his own affluence, his own vulnerability out of his own strength, his own impotence out of his own erotomania, himself blowing the trumpet that brought the walls of his own city tumbling down, all the while having convinced himself that he was too numerous. So he labored with pill and scalpel and syringe to make himself fewer, until at last, having educated himself into imbecility and polluted and drugged himself into stupefaction, he keeled over, a weary, battered old brontosaurus, and Western man became extinct. That's it. We've got it too good, way too good. He's blessed this nation. It's all powerful. And all he asks in return is just keep me at the front. What do we do with the spare time that he gives us? We toil, we labor, we try to remove him from everything. We're bored, so we start removing him from everything. There is a high school coach in church. You should be praying for him right now in Peoria. There is a high school coach. This isn't some faraway high school. This isn't California I'm talking about. I'm talking about Peoria, Illinois. The football players pray in a circle before the games. This is nothing the coach has done. It's what the players are doing. So the coach made the mistake of taking his hat off and standing in a circle with them and quietly observing their prayer. This man's job is on the line because of this. Because the Freedom From Religion Foundation has filed a lawsuit with the school saying that he's leading them in prayer. So what if he is? We need to get this stuff back. We got to push back. You got to push back. They're not afraid to push. They're not afraid to get out and file a lawsuit. Well, he's praying with those kids. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? It's unbelievable. This is Peoria, Illinois. We need to be praying for that man. This world, what do we do with it? So we remove him from everything. What does the end game look like? Let me tell you what it looked like. The Bible, remember the manual, gives us a story. It tells us what it looks like. The captivity of the 10 northern tribes in 722 BC was written about in Psalms 80. The psalmist recognized God's people had removed themselves through apostasy from the blessings of the Mosaic covenant. They had turned away from God, in plain English, and the hedge was removed from them. It happened to Israel. So in Psalms 80, 1 through 3, they pray, "Hear us, shepherd of Israel, you who lead Joseph like a flock, you who sit enthroned between the cherubim, shine forth before Ephraim, Benjamin, and Manasseh. Awaken your might. Come and save us. Restore us, O God. Make your face shine on us that we may be saved." The psalmist was heartsick to see God remove the hedge of protection from Israel. In 8 through 13, he goes on to say, "You transplanted a vine from Egypt. You drove out the nations and planted it. You cleared the ground for it. It took root and it filled the land. The mountains were covered with its shade. The mighty cedars with its branches. Its branches reached as far as the sea. Its shoots as far as the river. Why have you broken down its walls so all who pass by pick our grapes? Boars from the forest ravage it, and insects from the field feed on it." That could just as well be America. And there will come a time, if we do not keep him forefront, if the church lays dormant, if the church stops building bridges to each other, if the church stops giving the truth of God, if they stop trading the truth of the Word of God for a lie, there will be a time when we will fall flat on our face and we will be writing the same psalm. "Oh Lord, please come save us now. We're sorry. We didn't realize you were doing all this for us." It's too late. The ship has sailed. He reminds me of the kid who had a temper problem. And so his dad said, every time you lose your temper, I want you to go up to the fence and I want you to drive a nail in it. Okay. Every time he lost his temper, he went up and put a nail in the fence. Dad quit punishing him after that. He thought, well, this is all right. Kept losing his temper, kept putting nails in the fence. And his dad said, okay, son, you got a little older. Next time you show compassion to someone or kindness, I want you to go pull a nail out. Okay. So he got older, he got more mature, he started to show compassion and kindness. He started to pull out those nails one by one. Took a while. Eventually he had all the nails back out of the fence, but he noticed something. The fence was full of holes. You see, once you drive the nail, you can take it out, but you're going to leave the scar. Once you hurt somebody, once you stab them with something, you can ask for forgiveness. They can forgive you, but here's the truth. The scar will remain. We are talking about people's lives. We're talking about our children. Don't drive the nail in the first place. Muggeridge said it. We blow the trumpet that brings our own city down. We tear and remove until at last this nation will fall over like a weary old brontosaurus. Church, why can't we get it right? We just can't. We fall short of God's will, of His perfection. We're not able to keep a good thing going. He knows this. But that doesn't get us, the ones that know the truth, from calling it out. Social reform. Oh man, if we could just make it a better place for these people. If we could just do a little social engineering, we could make it a little better place for these people. Church, I'm going to tell you today that social engineering and social reform simply makes this world a better place to go to hell from. That's true. The people that are doing this and propagating this, they're arranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Right? The ship's going down, but the band never stopped playing. Hey, these chairs are sliding over. Let's set this. Oh, man. Hold on. Oh, they're sliding over again. No! They were scrambling for the lifeboats. Don't be the person that arranges the deck chairs on the Titanic. This can go for many things. Don't be looking side-eyed to the new people. Don't be looking side-eyed to the people that you know are here, but they've got these checkered pasts. Embrace them. Be thankful they're here. Jesus built the bridges with His disciples. Strong enough. They were loyal enough to be martyred for Him. You can't do that with people that don't need it. God's got to do that. We build bridges to people that need the bridges. I'll close with this. I heard Brother Josh Moore the other day. He was preaching on making Satan regret the very things that he used against you. He said for him it was alcohol. You know his story. A lot of you, he's an alcoholic, delivered from that. For you, maybe it's lust, greed, envy, gluttony. You know your hang-ups. He said the way to be effective is using that burden, using that curse, using the things that Satan decided to tempt you with, or with the things Satan robbed you of, against him. Use it against him. You know your crutch, but are you now reformed? Are you reaching out to those struggling with your old set of crutches? To those people stuck in a way of life that you were stuck in? Free them through Jesus Christ to be better. Use the tools that Satan tempted you with for good. For good. That's what CR is all about. We got leaders that are using the tools that Satan decided to tempt them with and using the things that Satan decided to take from them and turning around and making sure he can't take it from somebody else. There's power in that, church. See, Josh says he wakes up every morning sober and he puts his shoes on and he hopes every morning Satan says, oh man, he's up again. I rue the day I tempted him with that addiction. He's used it to free countless others. He's used it to build bridges between them, the broken, and God. What a testimony. I hope when I strap on my shoes, church, Satan gets upset. This guy is going to take people to God and God to people. And let me tell you one last thing, church. Just like I pray over my children, there are those of you in this room that will do greater things than I ever did. And their children will do greater things than they ever did. Better things than I ever dreamed of doing for Christ. There will be those of you, maybe you're some young people in here. And you know, maybe you don't hang right now with the cool crowd. Maybe at school you're not in the cool crowd. Because you refuse to compromise your morals for the world's values. Right? Listen to me. Those same people that are casting you out, those same young people that are in the cool crowd will think you're really cool when in your adult life you get to pull them out of their mess. You get to turn around and they get to come to you and they say, now wait a second, what are you doing? What is it you're doing? How come I can't have what you have? How come I don't have that joy? They're going to think you're real cool when you can point them to Jesus. You just got there before them, that's all. See, if you ask for the devil, he will show up every single time. And when they ask you, church, how is it you're so successful? How is it that God has blessed you and exalted you and highly favored you? How is it? Here's what you got to realize. The world is looking at the blessings. God give you that so you could point them to the blesser. God gives you the blessings to get their attention because that's what the world likes to see. And then you can never forget. I told a young man that the other day. He's incredibly talented. I said, what are you doing with that for God? He says, I don't know. I said, well, figure it out. Who you think give you all that talent? I can't do that. Point them at the blesser. Tell them where your hope is. Don't let them look at the blessing. Get out the manual, church. It's worked for 2,000 years.